So leave the lights out, leave the lights out. So leave the lights out, leave the lights out. I'm struggling now, struggling now. So leave the lights out, leave the lights out.
Oh, now I'm really nervous, yeah. It's weird talking to a mic without singing into a mic. But my name's Sam Martin, and I'm a singer-songwriter. And I'm from Oxford, and I'm here tonight. I've worked with you guys in the past, back last year, Camden Assembly. It was very, very
for a
cool.
festival, didn't you?
Yeah, it was very cool. That was like midway, or just towards the end of like festival season last year. But yeah, I'm currently on, or midway through a summer tour. So yeah, that's me at the moment. That's me.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a really. I guess all there is to say.
Maybe I should introduce
Short
you.
and sweet.
Yeah.
Maybe I should start writing your business cards.
Man.
Definitely doubting
I think
yourself.
you should,
yourself.
yeah. See, I
guys got
always
vocals,
do.
I
I
can
always
tell
do.
you.
Yeah. That's my thing.
Wicked. Yeah, I'm Tyler West. I'm a presenter for MTV and Kiss FM on radio. So I work in TV and radio. I've been doing that for about 4 years now. And yeah, and I've had, I guess, when you guys approached me with this idea of coming to talk about grief and mental health and things like that, it really just resonated with me, and it's something that is so close to my heart. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be talking on this panel.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us on such an upbeat topic as
Yeah,
always.
for real.
It doesn't get any, but I'm joking. So I guess the first one. These are all backwards.
I know.
Okay. We're just gonna.
We're all good. Yeah, this is
Right.
great.
It's fine.
Lovely one. So the first question, I guess, is what is grief to you personally? I mean, it can be a whole manner of things. I'm talking from, it could be from death to relationships to pets. We were talking about pets earlier.
Yeah.
So what is grief to you?
Well, to me, I think it's an overwhelming feeling that doesn't make you feel like you. Like, and that's quite, I say that quite loosely because I think that grief under the heading of mental health is it's multifaceted. Like, there's so many different angles, and what's grief to me is different to the next person and different to the person after that. So I think when you're talking about grief in general, it's like be all or end all is like it makes you feel like you are not yourself. It just completely, and that could be social, that could be behavioural, that could be, you know, in whatever way, shape or form, how it takes its effect on you. There's different things that can happen in our lives that has the effect of grief. Whether that be a place that you was at before, whether losing someone, a current situation that you're in your life that you look up to it and then you're not there no more. Whichever way you look around it, there's different ways that you can interpret it, if you know what I mean.
100%.
For sure. Yeah, I think it completely undermines everything you are when you're grieving and when you are going through any element of grief. I think it changes your. I mean, you're learning to live with something that isn't you, and I think for the most part, I'm sure a lot of people would agree that you are aware of, I don't want to feel like this, and whether it's a relationship or a loss of a loved one or whatever it may be, I think your mind is so consciously saying, I don't want to feel like this, but we're riding this out right now. And I think different people deal with grief in different ways. I think you can either face it head on. A lot of people repress things. You know, I'm certainly someone who just likes to break things down and assess like what's, as far as reality goes, what's happened, and how can I keep people around me to make sure that this will be okay. And you know, a lot of grief, it never goes away. I think you just learn to live with certain types of grief, especially like losing somebody or breaking up with somebody or whatever it is. You learn to, in a way, kind of incorporate it into your everyday life, but treat it kind of with this reverence of this happened, but you know, I'm moving on from it, if that makes sense.
It's interesting that you said it. There's an interesting way to think about it, like when you say that, like you can't change things that are like unchangeable. It sounds so simple. You can't change things that are unchangeable, but you can change things that are changeable. So meaning how you then operate moving forward isn't going to change what's happened. Like, do you know what I mean? You can't change what's happened, you can change what's going to come. So yeah.
And it's just assessing things in a way that's like, what's actually, what can I take from this and what can I learn from this? And how what's actually happened versus what is my mind telling me might happen? And
for real.
Yeah, it's not you. I think grief no, regardless of how you deal with it, is a very specific to the individual type thing, isn't it?
It's a whole kind of learning curve in the sense that it's not something you know or what is part of you.
No, not at all.
And you definitely have to learn each time it's different, I would say. So here's one, as two male characters. Do you grieve?
Yes.
Do you think you grieve? Do you grieve? Do you not grieve?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think in more things than I'm probably aware of, and I grieve like the slightest thing. That sounds really funny, I know, because it's all subjective, I think, how you grieve, and the things that you do grieve over, you know, it doesn't have to be something as tragic and as life-changing as it is when you lose someone, or when you leave a relationship, or when you lose a friendship, or it can be something on the other end of the scale, something that every day you wake up and go, you know, that's brought me down, and I do miss that, and I do have a sense of grieving for that. Yeah.
I definitely, I suffered with, so when I lost my nan and granddad, in fact, 2010 was a shit year. Like, I had a really shit year, I'll be honest. I went for a lot of things with like PTSD, because I witnessed something in my house, and it just completely affected me. And then following on from that, my stepdad became an alcoholic, abused my mum, and then after that, my granddad passed away, just decided to go, you know, like, bless him. And I think, like, I suffered on, like, it's just a different scale. You don't really know, like, I can't go like, oh, I'm feeling like this today because my granddad passed away, I'm feeling like this today because of PTSD, or I'm feeling like this today because I'm grieving. Like, you can't really put your finger on it. So that's why when I said, like, when you ask me what is grief, it is just this feeling that makes you feel not like you. And that's just loose. That's loose around it. I think it's fine to grieve, man.
Yeah,
That's the hardest.
That
is. I swear to God, it's the easiest, hardest lesson that I've ever learned in my whole entire life. It's like it's fine. It's fine not to be okay.
Yeah. It is an inherent human process, isn't it? You have to grieve to understand what life is, I think. And that's what you just said. That really hit home. Like, when, especially with the grandparents, I lost both my grandparents, both the two that I actually knew when I was like 10 years old.
Yeah.
They were basically my other parents to me. So you go from, these people are walking around every day, to suddenly they're not, and you can't really comprehend that.
And it's like, and then also, because you mentioned about your age, you was 10 then, how do you grieve then to grieve now? It's like, you could sit there one day and sit there like, oh, I've really missed my nan and granddad.
Yeah.
There's no way about it.
It's in waves, doesn't it? It's just like, wow, you know, some days it just comes in waves like that, but yeah.
It's very healthy. I think personally that it's very necessary. You know, she mentioned I have PTSD and I still occasionally suffer from it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, grieving was a huge part of what happened. You know, people were saying you need to grieve what happened, you need to grieve who you were and what you've lost, the trauma you've been through. And I think when I started to kind of finally grasp onto that notion of letting go and becoming something new from it took a good toll on me, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's a very natural thing as humans that we're built to do it, clearly.
Sure.
But it's definitely, you know, in certain situations, it's difficult, you know. We mentioned, for instance, about being a man, you know. I guess the question would be, do you feel... I feel almost privileged in the position I'm in, because as a female, it's socially more acceptable to be seen to cry, to grieve.
Oh.
You know, at the funeral, my granddad's funeral in January, all the women were crying, men not so much. And it was so socially acceptable, which is to me like, you know, BS really. But what do you feel as two guys? You know, do you feel a lot of pressure from that?
Now, absolutely none at all. And that's partly because growing up with two sisters who were incredibly selfless and very sensitive people who encouraged us to cry and not conform to, like, I mean, there's a lot of, the whole toxic masculinity argument now has never been more relevant, because we are from an early age, and kids of my generation, I'm sure yours, I think we're a similar age, it's very, you know, man up, don't cry, don't grieve, don't be sad. It's you know, there are so many people in the world that sadly still believe that should be the case. And, you know,
It stemmed from tradition, man.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that tradition's amazing in some aspects. Like, all the family getting together around Christmas. Like, some people do that. I don't do that.
Yeah.
But some traditions, if it works for you, it works for you. But at the same time, it's like it's the same thing with my nan and granddad. Like, I mean, my nan she would always be at home cooking, cleaning, looking after the kids. My granddad would go out and do all this stuff. That's bullshit, man.
Yeah.
It is completely. It is absolutely. There's just certain things about that tradition that I don't believe, because then the knock-on effect. The reason why, like the male suicide rate is at an all-time high. Because of these things that have stemmed down. Because it has been thrown. It's not said out. It's not spoken out into. It's not said out into the open about like, oh yeah, you men, you can't cry. But subconsciously, it's there. It's still not as easy for us to then open up. But now I feel like, no, man, you need to cry.
Cry, you cry.
There's nothing emasculating about it. I mean, to me personally, I guess we're more, as we say, kind of forward thinkers in that aspect. For a lot of people, it's even if it's not projected on them by society enough, which it already is, it's something that they subconsciously feel.
Yeah, in the back of their mind.
It's, as we were saying, it's a healthy, natural way to do, and it shouldn't be conformed to. But it's nice to know that you don't, even if there are pressures there at times, it's not something you necessarily want to adhere to, you know.
I think it's bullshit. I think men should, you know, I've cried with probably more male friends in the last couple of years about things that have affected them than I ever would have thought, because I think men now, especially with the way that media is treating this specific subject of, no, you are allowed to cry, you're allowed to do, you know, you don't have to conform to this like age-old idea of, like you said, men go to work, women stay at home.
Yeah, it's
completely backwards now, but that's so true. I think it's brilliant that we are bringing more awareness to it, and that people are slowly becoming less shut off, because especially growing up with like mainly women in the house, I think it was just instilled from us from what we
that's interesting, because I never grew up with my dad. Like my dad he left when I was 6 months, so like it was just my mum and my brother. So my mum, like her emotions and how she dealt with situations passed down to us.
Absolutely.
So maybe we got it good, man.
I think we did.
Maybe we actually got it good.
Yeah.
It's definitely something, you know, I've written here kind of a question on who do you share your grief with? I mean, for everyone has, I guess, someone that they feel more comfortable. I mean, I'm not good at grieving. I was saying earlier, I put it in a box and put it in a really high shelf that I don't plan to open, but sometimes these shelves fall on you or something, you know, God knows, God forbid. And there are certain people that my mum, I will open up about anything in the world, grief, anything. My dad, I struggle with it because I don't want to upset him. But when it comes to, you know, certain things like grief, there are certain friends that I would probably go to, and certain friends that I wouldn't want to approach, whether because they've been through something horrific themselves or, you know, put that pressure on them. So I guess, who is easiest for you to go to out of interest to grieve with?
For me, my barber. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
My barber, Jake. No, because I don't know, there's something about when you get in a barber chair, you just sit there and talk to them about your life story, leave
as long as
it
it's
in the
not
chair,
the weather,
and then he's just like, right, half an hour, that's done right now. Next customer in, that's it. Well, it's my barber, but it's also I'd say it's more the case of testing the waters and see. Just open up to we're all human beings. We're all human beings. So whether it's your mum, your neighbour, or whoever, like as long as you trust that person and you feel like you can confide in that person, then just go and test the waters, because you'll be very surprised about who then the closest people that you then go to in the future actually end up being. Like it actually isn't my best friends, because when I go to my best friends, I see like an escape, like, oh, come on boys, we're going on a night out, and stuff. Like that's great. But then there's also like a person at my work, one of my producers that I just go to all the time. We can just shut the door. How you doing, man? You're alright, and we can just have that heart-to-heart chat.
Nice,
That's away from everything else. So for me, it's just testing the waters with various different people. My mum still is always there, but also I always feel that that pressure. Like I don't want to stress her. I don't want her to worry about it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. No, I like that though. I like the barber bit.
That's great. Yeah, I was just saying.
I guess we all do have our unexpected ones, don't they? I just
he only listens though. He don't talk back.
It's like a good therapist.
It's just a rant.
People pay a lot of money for that.
It's like therapy and a haircut all in one. It's great. No, I love that. I think that there are certainly specific people in my life who I know I can trust. Not even trust with certain things, but I feel like I can open up to, because, like you said with your mum, like you don't. There's so much on their mind. Our parents have done so much for us, and I think like, I don't want to burden this person with it. But my dad is like he's my best friend and a parent, like rolled into one package.
Yeah.
And at the moment, he's going through a lot of stuff, and my parents are going through a lot of stuff where we are in constant contact with both of them, and it's so important to just check in. I think checking in with
100%.
someone when they're going through grief, or when regardless of your situation, I think just an occasional, hey, you right, man? Like, what's going on? You know,
I think that's a lot of it, isn't it?
It's just that sometimes.
Conversation.
Yeah, it's just that. It's breaking down the wall of, oh, can I ask you about this? Is this okay? Yeah, like, I love what you said about your friends and just like, come on boys, we're going on a night out. That's just, you can't always revert it back to, let's like forget about this for one night. I think you need to be able to speak to some friends completely unsubjectively and break it down to an emotional thing. I've got one or two friends like that, but I'd say my dad is probably like.
Yeah.
That's nice. It's different things, though, isn't it, for people? Like sometimes you need to go out and get bladdered and deal with it that way. Do you know what I mean?
About an hour, yeah.
I'll be editing that one out. Sometimes you do, and then sometimes you need it where you just want to be on your own. So everyone has like at times different people, different things. I think a good thing which you mentioned actually being open and feeling that you can grieve openly. Especially when there's a lot of stress, as you said, whether it's like you're head of a family, a lot of men are head of a family, don't want to, as you said, put a burden on someone. Even though it's not a burden, but it feels you don't want to, sometimes you don't want to stress
be tiptoeing around you and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it don't work around.
So I think, what you mentioned about being open and communication is key and checking in, I like that. That should be our New Year.
That should be our New Year.
Everyone thing that we do.
Everybody check in.
Everyone check in.
And that doesn't mean on Facebook.
No, that does not mean checking yourself in until like April. It means just saying, hey, is
sometimes you need that. And I saw on Facebook, I won't mention names, but someone had put a post about they were having a rough time and they didn't need particularly anything as such, but they asked that their friends or people they hadn't spoke to if they wanted to check in with them. And I've never seen a post like that, I don't think. And it kind of shocked me. I was like, wow, that's
I see
daring.
such a shift in people writing posts like that, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook, and I think the importance of that is we spend so many hours of the day kind of idly just scrolling through apps.
Yeah.
And when you see something that catches, I mean, I do, and the industry, things are changing. 2019's been a bit of a weird year. I think a lot of people will agree as far as social interaction goes, but when you see a post like that, or just something saying, check in with your mates, or you're going through stories on Instagram and it says, just stop for a minute. Is everyone that's important to you okay? Like, have you checked in with everyone? Like, is everyone cool? It's so important, I think. It's so important just to communicate with people like that.
Definitely. Do you ever feel like you have to, for me, I schedule in your grief. Now, it sounds ridiculous. as someone who is very OCD and obsessed with everything being right in my calendar, I'm not saying I put timetable it in as, 11 a.m, better schedule in my grief. But I find that there are times where, for instance, like self-care Sunday, I've clocked onto this new thing. That is my time
all
for
the way.
me. And also in those times where whether I'm going out or for a walk or whatever it is, or no social media, I check in with myself. So I guess it's related to grief, it's related to so many things.
Yeah.
Is there do you think you have to schedule it in? Is it something that just comes really naturally?
I think that it's not a case of like scheduling it in, it's more just a case like, I ain't got time for that right now. And unfortunately, the case is that whenever it comes over you, like that is the time that you need to just let it all out.
Yeah,
but
100%.
I think like for me especially, like you're never going to get a radio presenter go on air and go, guys, I'm having a really shit day today. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, if I come across moody, then the millions of people that we're talking to is just going to absolutely switch off. But so for my work, 100% I put a front on and I have to go in and be all smiley presenter every single time. But that's not always reality behind the scenes. And that's the same thing with TV. You go on and you put a smiley face on. Yeah, absolutely. But then at the same time, then when I go home and I'm in my quiet space, I can do I can. If I want to let it out, I let it out. If not, then we'll see for another day. But I think it's not a case of scheduling it. It's just more of like letting it out.
Self-awareness.
When you can, self-awareness. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's about being. I mean, for me, especially doing what I do, where you're traveling a lot and you're never really in one place for very long. Like I went to America in April and I was dealing with quite a lot in my head before that, and I told myself like, just not now, just not. Don't let that ruin this next chapter of what I'm going to be doing. But it's like I think that's so true what you just said about when it happens, you have to face it then and there, because you do repress things.
But it's not even just in the work that we do, right? It's like any single job that anybody does on a day-to-day basis, whether you're working in a bar, whether you're a receptionist, whatever it is your occupation is, you feel the need that you can't just let it out wherever, which is a shame, because that is what it's like. You say you put it up on a high shelf, right?
Yeah.
But backfire.
Oh, it comes
one
back.
way or
It
another.
comes
That shell
back.
will fall. Yeah,
Backfire.
that shell will fall
Yeah,
straight.
absolutely backfire. So it's more just
Yeah.
the case that just keep like if it comes, it comes, and you
Yeah.
kind of need to go with it. And I think now in 2019, now there's more talk around mental health.
100%.
It's much more allowed. Like definitely in my workplace, it is as well. Like if you've got problems, you can go and talk to the boss and say, "Look, I need time off work. This is it."
That's amazing. Yeah.
You don't want it to backfire, and I mean, for me, when the bipolar kind of started when I was about 12,
Yeah.
and I lost my nan, who was very close to, huge role model, about 14, I think, 14, and at that time I didn't grieve.
No.
I still have a very bad habit with it, but not as bad as that, and I never thought it was going to come back and bite me on the bum.
Yeah.
And boy did it.
Sure.
I mean, it was a big trigger for the bipolar to go completely even worse. And I never realised that. I think maybe it's an age thing that we learn that we need to deal with it. And I think it's important what you're saying, especially in jobs. You know, you feel embarrassed, like to say to
It's
people,
terrible, isn't it?
to your boss that, give me 10 minutes, or to even cry because am I going to lose my job? Is someone going to go the way? You know
I
what I mean?
took 2 weeks off. I came back in. They were like auditioning other presenters. I was like, listen, I'm fine. I'm fine now.
Still gone.
I'm not going nowhere.
But it's a huge pressure, and I think it leads really nicely to this, which is the idea of grief ever ending or ceasing.
Yeah.
I mean, ceasing is not necessarily ending, but I think people, everyone says it. I've had my little sister, she goes to me, "Oh, is this ever going to end?" And you don't want to break their heart and just trash their soul and be like, "No, it's not going to." But obviously, you have to be realistic, and it's more about, I guess, saying about there's a way to cope with it. You learn how to live with it, which is very cliche.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's the same for you guys. You don't believe it's gonna.
No,
do you
absolutely.
believe that grief is like a ending idea?
I
that
think
makes
I think
sense.
it comes back to what we briefly touched on earlier on. It's just like you learn to make it part of who you are, not in a negative way necessarily forever, but you learn to just think, well, this changed my life in such a crazy way. I'm still me. The thing I think a lot of people forget when they're going through any element of grief is that they're still themselves, but they're just a very different and very kind of torn version of themselves.
Yeah.
You're in a lot of pain, and like you said about self-awareness, actually, it's so important to just check in with yourself and to have those moments where you're saying, well, what am I actually going through right now? But I don't think it ever ends. I think it just, which sounds really morbid, like it never ends. Like it's a constant cycle. But it's I think it teaches you a lot about yourself, and also you just learn to adapt. It's just you human beings. I think we don't give ourselves enough credit in our ability to adapt in situations.
I like that the adaptation thing, 100%.
We're good at it. Even if we don't think we are. All human. I think all people, at their core, are pretty good at it.
I think it brings new things out there.
Yeah, for real.
With the PTSD, I mourned, and part of me that was gone.
Yeah.
And I had friends tell me, "Oh, you're not that person anymore," and I mourned, "Am I going to ever be that person again?" The amount of times I cried outside gigs on the phone to my mum and said, "I'm never going to be that person again. I'm dead, like inside." It sounds really stupid, but at the time it still is a huge thing to me.
Yeah.
And but then you have to, I think, over time you learn that there's number one, it does come back.
Yeah.
But there's, as you say, there's a whole new element of you that happens that you never have
that's
known
it.
about.
And you sort of forget about yourself in a way, because ultimately, I think a lot of us neglect our own. I mean, especially like you said, no matter what job you're in, I think we do forget ourselves sometimes, and we forget to kind of look at our own situation and go, am I alright at the moment? And if you're someone who's really up for helping other people all the time and you want to, that's just part of who you are. I think grieving is even harder because you don't really care about yourself very much in that respect.
Right.
I don't think it ever becomes easier. It just becomes easier to live with.
Yeah.
I think you kind of adapt. You're exactly right. But there's also a beauty in it though. Like if you can actually find the balance and use it as like, I call it like a tackling fuel, right? So all the bad things that had happened in my past before, and affected me mentally and put me in a hole and kicked me out of school and stuff like that. All the things that had happened, I'd just fuel it in this tank and then literally use it to where I'd go. Because if you had asked me when I was 14, like, would you ever be a presenter? Would you ever talk on stage? Would you ever present a show or anything? Never in a million years. I was just gaming, I was pizza, wouldn't come out my bedroom, I was a recluse. But it's the case of taking those negatives, taking the things that have affected you mentally, and plugging it in and then using them to get to your destination. Because then now I'm sitting here like, all right, okay, cool. The work that I do is great. That I'm happy in the person that I am. I'm happy about my girlfriend and my family. It's all great. But those things are still in the back of my head every single day.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm still smiling and I'm still going, the world's not ending.
Yeah.
You know, I've still got a roof over my head. I've still got food in my belly, which I'm very lucky and grateful for.
Yeah.
So it's those things that you've got to take your blessings and then kind of use the negatives to push you.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real big beauty. You watch, if you was to sit there and go, right, I'm really down today and stuff like that, and then you sit there and go, actually, no, I'm not going to let this defeat me.
Yeah.
It sounds so much easier said, but it is actually easy to do. It's literally just a flick of a switch in your head to then go, right, this is going to push me as opposed to pull me back.
Yeah.
100%. I think it's about definitely growth. I think it's about healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You heal and you learn to deal with it, isn't it? 100%, which very morbid for everyone.
No, it's true.
And I think the last thing that I wanted to say is obviously we associate grief with death, ultimately.
Yeah.
When I actually think coping's the wrong word to use, but I'm going to use it. I cope better with death than I have done with other things. So I found it, for instance, harder to grieve friendships when they're not good for me than someone literally dying.
Yeah.
So I guess, do you think grief's the easiest one or the only one for you, or is there something else that you've struggled more so with in the idea of grief?
Yeah, I think it's so subjective. For me, I'm with you on that actually, which sounds really morbid and kind of silly in a way to say like, oh yeah, no, I don't grieve the loss of people as much. From when you're so young and you lose people that are so close to you, I think it kind of opens your eyes to living your life as much as you can and to the absolute best of your ability. To be the best person you possibly can, because I think again we forget that sometimes of like in the grand scheme of things, and it sounds really silly and you can get really deep on it, but how old we are as a civilization versus how short our lives are. It's like it's crazy, but like things like that keep me awake at night, and it's kind of like, wow, I need to do everything I want to do, and I kind of promise myself, like upon like losing my grandparents, that the last thing they'd probably want is for me to sit and just be not me.
It's a wake up call.
It is a big wake up call.
Yeah,
and you're like, but you're allowed to grieve as well. But I think for me, like grieving friendships and losing people, relationships. I recently went through a breakup. I probably wasn't myself for a lot of the end of that relationship, and that's why it had to end, because I wasn't being myself and I wasn't engaged with myself, and I was just kind of going through the motions of this thing every day.
Maybe that's the reality of it though, because it is death, it's kind of final.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I boo at funerals. I'm on the floor, so I'm not good with that. But when it comes to that, that's done in my eyes. And like, friendships, it might have grieved that friendship, but it's still going on. It's still life. It's still happening. So maybe it's that notion that it hasn't fully stopped. I guess the
death is more definitive.
It is definitely.
That's it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, death is definitive. You're right.
Definitive. That sounds really silly.
It is. You're right. It's more the case that if you lose somebody, you know that obviously there's nothing you can do about the situation to bring it back. Why you may have been grieving more and find it tougher on friendships is because it's still something that can possibly change and come back. Like you never know. But for me, it was the exact same thing. As soon as when my nan passed away, I was like, I'm crying my eyes out because I miss her and I want her back. But actually, I've still got all the memories. I've still, that nothing can ever take that away from me.
No.
So you got to just look at the things that you can take from the situation as opposed to the things that drag you down.
It's like you just said about when you're grieving, or when when you sit sometimes and you're at home and you think, I'm having a really rough day, and then you look at all the amazing positives in your life. It's the same when you lose someone.
There's something called I think it's like the 5 second or the 5 minute rule. Like if it's not going to affect you in 5 years' time, don't hold on to it for like 5 minutes.
Absolutely, it's the same with trying to change things.
Like, don't get me wrong, when my nan passed away, I held on to it for longer than 5 minutes, but that's a bit of a different story. But when it comes to little things on a day-to-day basis that might stress you out, or things that you might grieve over that aren't as deep as losing someone, then yeah, if it's not going to affect you in 5 years' time, then just don't hold on to it, man. There's no point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You've got to be a bit savage with yourself, because it's also those things. Yeah, you say like life's too short and things like that. Without getting too deep on that, just then make sure that when you're up in your day, you're living every single minute to the best you possibly can be.
So you're so good at this, you guys. Like, every question you're like flowing beautifully into it.
It's you.
Wow, what a flow.
Bounce off of.
So I was kind of hoping to wrap up with grief, I guess. Some of the other topics, we have different ends on how we do it. For anyone who's watching, who's seeing it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I guess for me, this one, what would be some advice? So for me, it would be communication's key, openly grieve. There was another one. Oh God, I forgot my own point. Oh, and seek help if you need it.
Yeah.
So for instance, some people who lose their parents very young, that is going to affect you in 5 years' time. So seek some support if you need it, or, you know, God forbid. What would be your key bit of advice for maybe if someone's watching this who is grieving, or someone who has been grieving and needs a bit of, you know, kind of a helping hand? What's your best advice?
Just let it all out, man. Let it all out, because the longer you keep it in, the worse like, the sort of consequences of when you finally do let it out will be.
Yeah.
But don't be scared of that moment either, because the minute you do, it's like a massive weight off your shoulders.
Yeah,
like it genuinely is. And it was, and then obviously like using it as a tackling fuel, as what I was saying, is like you can actually find a way for it to project you to places that you never thought that you could once be. And I think, and it kind of rides on something of what I do like every single day. Like I always do this. I live by this meaning. It's like attack your fears daily.
Yeah.
Like literally. So get up if you like. So if you're scared of like public speaking, go and tell a stranger you like their shoes. Even if you don't like their shoes, it's just the fact that you just went up to them and spoke to them. And then you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know what doors that then opens up for you. Because the more I was whenever I first spoke on the radio, right, I was petrified, like I was shaking. I put it up, I said all the wrong words, but then now I've done it so many times. It's fine, it feels like I've been doing it for like 6 years. I've been doing it 6 months. But it's just them things, it's repetition is key. So if opening up and finding that balance with your feelings and the things and thoughts that is going through your head, if you do that on a regular basis, it becomes easier over time to be able to deal with it. And then once you're obviously loving and caring for yourself, you can help other people. That's the key.
I like that. That's nice.
Yeah, I think just keeping people around you, I think for me was like one of the biggest things when you're grieving.
Nice.
Just don't lock yourself away. I mean, granted, you're going to have those days where you, like you said, you just want to be in bed, and just watch Friends in your pants and just do nothing and just eat. And just chill out. Yeah, to be fair, actually that might be my night instead of a night out. To be fair, guys, I'm going to head off in a bit. But like, I think just I love what you just said about attacking your emotions. It's so true, because if I don't know, personally, just if I wake up and I know that something's not right and I'm not feeling myself, before I do anything else that day, I'll try and identify what that is I'm feeling and how I can change it. And not even how I can change it, but just how I can acknowledge it, you know? Yeah. And I think we're very good at kind of just pushing things down. And that's you know, I think just for me, keep people around you. And if I'm feeling really bummed out, and especially this line of work, like, it's really easy to get like post-travel blues, but like on a really weird scale where you kind of feel like, oh, I'm just sat still for 5 minutes, I'm not working hard, I'm not doing enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know about you, but if you take a day off, especially in any job, you're just like,
you don't know how to relax.
You don't know how to relax. And I have that a lot at the moment, and especially like being on tour at the moment, it's hard when you have like an off day, because you just want to be doing the thing you love, but it's you know, go and see a friend, go and talk to a mate, talk to, like you said, the friend that you can speak to, or the family member that you can speak to. Just don't lock yourself away, and don't quit on your own emotions, because they will carry you through, you know.
What good advice! That's agony aunts. Great. We'll be here
every day.
Every day this week. Give your address out.
Yeah, sweet. Please do. Yeah. I need another line of work.
Well, thank you very much for joining me.
And
I think we made that very upbeat for
thank you.
such a topic that I was sat here early thinking,
Yeah.
So, and thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.